So I would like to introduce the Executive Director for the Institute for Nonprofit Research and Administration, Dr. Heather Carpenter.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's screening of Join or Die. My name is Heather Carpenter, as Wendell Riley said, and I'm Executive Director of the Institute for Nonprofit Administration and Research, or short for INAR, at LSU Shreveport. At INAR, our mission is to strengthen the nonprofit sector through education, research, and community engagement. We're here to support the leaders and organizations who make our communities stronger every day. I'm a big fan of Robert Putnam and his work, and the documentary you're about to see, called Join or Die. It's a powerful reminder of how civic engagement and community connection can shape our democracy and our daily lives. A huge thank you to my amazing team at INAR and Wendell Riley and Jeffrey Goodman for helping make this screening possible. We're also deeply grateful for our event sponsor, Hurd, McElroy, and Vestal, and to the Robinson Film Center, not only for hosting us tonight, but for all they do to bring thoughtful, inspiring films to our community. You should have received a postcard when you came in. On the front, you'll find a QR code linking to our community database of volunteer opportunities, clubs, and ways that you can get involved and your own step towards joining. And I know many of you are already involved, or how you can get involved further. There are also note cards available for you to write down any questions that you have for our panelists. At any time during the film or afterwards, feel free to jot down your questions and pass it to the end of the row. My staff from INAR will be available after the film in the four corners of the room, and will be picking up the note cards, and we'll be getting them to our moderator, Jeffrey Goodman. Immediately after the film, we'll host a panel discussion, so please plan to stay. We're hoping at least 50% of that conversation comes from you. Your voice and perspective matter. And finally, thanks to your ticket purchase tonight, you're also supporting the important work of the Robinson Film Center. We hope you enjoy the film and leave inspired to join, connect, and make a difference. Thank you.
Please, we love to hear from you. But my first question, just to kick things off, and you can take it in whatever order you'd like, is simply what struck you guys the most watching the film? And I'd like to hear from each of you.
You know, one of the things that I was looking at that I found was very interesting was when they were looking at the economy and how, you know, they were saying that, you know, looking back on when we started joining things and when we started trusting the government more and so forth, it was after that Gilded Age when things were going down. And I think that, you know, they've been showing that things have been, you know, the membership and economy, the inequality, and of course I'm going to point that out teaching sociology, that the inequality between people in the United States especially, we see that that's growing, and so it looks like we're in a good place to go into an upswing, and that's what I took from it.
I guess, so the chamber was founded in 1910, so we were at the sort of the top of that list, and when we talk about the history, literally a bunch of people got together at a meeting and said, hey, we need to come together to do something great for the community. And because I tell people this is our second pandemic, you know, we've been around for 115 years, and so I'm just a caretaker for this organization, because there are lots of people who came before me and hopefully lots of people who come after. And so our tagline at the chamber is, you know, growing business, building community, because we feel like those two things are really linked. And what was interesting to me in the movie, and what I think I took away as a hopeful rather than as a declining sign, is that a lot of the things that we're trying to do organically Like, we have a big building that we're trying to save because we want people to use it. We had a whole bunch of ladies from around the region in our building last week for a flower show, because that's, from our perspective, the right thing to do. We want to be that space where people can come together. And so what was refreshing for me to see is that I hope, a lot of the kinds of things that we're trying to do, building spaces, building opportunities for connection, and hopefully being an organization that people can do something through, not just be a part of, really resonated. And so my dad was one of those people who was at the Kennedy inauguration who lived his life because ask not. And so I feel like as caretakers of this organization, that's our responsibility too.
I was struck by how it so much seemed to be tied to the lack of trust of government. What I saw was a downswing with, Watergate, Iran-Contra, Clinton. I see a downswing, and I'm generally an optimistic person, but I'm struggling to find how you turn that around. I think it's very much tied to public trust. I think the whole idea that you join together, we need to come together, but I think you only do that with trust. And so that's where I'm struggling. I'm looking at Mike Leonard because I'm thinking community renewal is one of the answers potentially, but I think that's where the space we have to be in is how you rebuild the trust, because I think only when there is that trust will people then come together. So that's what I took away from it most.
So I think for me, this is my second time watching this film here. And it's, for me, I'm in my head way too much. I overthink stuff. And it's really easy to get overwhelmed when you think about like the statistics and the data that all the stuff that they've thrown at us in this film. But there's a really great throwaway line at the end where, and I don't even remember who said it, I think it was one of the female researchers. She said, put all of that aside, right? Put all of the research aside. It's really about human connection. And that, when you just boil it down to that singular act of joining, of congregating, of connecting, then it becomes much more palatable. It's easier to think about. But really, that is the crux of this thing. That is the point of this film. So for me, it's about taking that step back, taking a breath, and realizing that a lot of us are actually doing the things that we should be doing societally already. We just need to encourage others to do it along with us.
Thank you. One sec. All right, so my next question again is for all four of you. Please, you can decide on the order, but the question is, strong community engagement is often linked to improved local economies and reduced crime rates. What do each of you see as Shreveport's biggest barriers to fostering civic participation, and how can we overcome them?
Can I go first as the foreigner in the room, one of the foreigners? So I came to Shreveport in 2009, and I've lived in several different states in the country, larger cities, smaller cities, small towns. Shreveport is actually a really cool place, and I say that to everybody that I meet. And I always get that same dead-eyed reaction from people who grew up here. It's a real thing, right? I think the biggest challenge that this town has, this region has, is this just this malaise. And it's really, really tough to deal with, especially if you are trying to change that, because it's ever present. And it's more prominent now than it was 10 years ago with the rise of social media use and the way that we interact with each other, or don't actually interact with each other. We interact with ourselves, and we think that we are winning arguments on Facebook. We're not. Nobody wins an argument on Facebook, right? For me, this this town has a real a self-confidence issue. And it's a bummer because Shreveport has so many cool things. And I mean that like in a genuine way. We have a symphony, we have a ballet troupe, we have a damn opera. We have a place like RFC where people come from other cities, large cities, and they're like, holy shit, y'all have this in Shreveport? And we're like, yeah. And then you go down the street, somebody who's lived here their entire lives, and they're like, what is Robinson Film Center? I've never been to the symphony, you know. But we have so many amazing things right here in this town already. But I think a big part of what we need to do is to tell ourselves that and give ourselves a little pat on the back. I'm not gonna take up too much time. So I helped with the cleanup this morning because it's Love the Boot Week in, shut up Lee, in Louisiana. And so I was cleaning up downtown and I was surprised at how few pieces of litter there were for me to pick up. Like Texas Street is actually a pretty clean street for like a main street in a city of our size. There was a lot of cigarette butts. But I'm like, man, this is, like I don't really have that much to do today. So I'm just like picking up like individual cigarette butts and pistachio shells, but that was really about it, right? So man, give Shreveport some love, people. That's all I have to say.
I would echo some of that. So I grew up in New Orleans and Shreveport. And I think that one of the things we're facing, this confidence problem, in the shadow of New Orleans, we're not as cool as New Orleans. In the shadow of Dallas, we're not as successful as Dallas. And so for whatever reason, we've always kind of been down on ourselves. And there's some sense of, I mean, so many people, I've watched a lot of friends that have moved out of town, moved away and gone elsewhere. And then there's some sense of those that are kind of left behind. Is it somehow less than? I actually find it to be the perfect ratio of things to do versus traffic. I don't want to live in New Orleans. I don't want to live in Baton Rouge. There's way too much traffic. There's Robinson Film Center, and it takes me like 4 minutes to get here, and there's no parking's no problem. Anyway, so I mean, I think a lot of ways it is that confidence problem. But I think to the question in terms of barrier, I do come back to, I think generally speaking, apathy. And I think that also comes back to trust in government, trust in the way things are run. There's kind of always the sense of, are we somehow more corrupt than other areas or less effective than other areas? And anyway, so for those that don't know me, I've worked in juvenile justice for about 25 years. And so I've worked in several other states, worked all over the country, and a lot with other areas of the state. So quarterly, our juvenile court would meet with Jefferson Parish, Orleans, East Baton Rouge, Calcasieu. We meet with all folks that do juvenile justice in the state. Shreveport is actually relatively unique in how well we collaborate. So I don't know if you have that sense, but I work with the parish government now. The parish, the city, the state, you know, if we're working on litter with Love the Boot Week, with Shreveport Green, there's a lot of collaboration. It is much easier in this city to work with, to call the mayor, the chief of police, the fire chief, to get a meeting, you know, LSU Med Center, the community foundation, community renewal, grab all these groups together and say, let's solve a problem, you know, common ground. I'm looking at all the folks in this audience. We come together way more easily and way more often than New Orleans, East Baton Rouge, Jefferson, any of those. And so there's a lot that we are doing where we may be able to combat that apathy, but I think that's the main barrier. And then I also just will have to say race. I think that's a huge factor that you can't overstate, I should say, is that's a divider for us. It's a history we're not proud of, and it leaves us with that sense of lack of trust. It divides us, and I do think that's one thing we have to address as well.
This gets harder as you go down the line. Like Wendell, I'm not from here, and so I've been here about 15 years now, I guess. Married a lady who lives here, and you know, the not from here thing is or the those who can leave do or whatever kind of approach I think is critical. I agree with both of what these gentlemen have said. My contribution to that, I guess, to me is what I see in Shreveport is not a lack of leadership, but a lack of followership. We have, if you think about, we have what, like 2,000 nonprofit organizations. We have more churches per capita than any place in the country. Everybody wants to start something. Everybody wants to be in charge of something. But very few, I found, want to join something and put there and be a follower, be part of somebody else's vision. It's all about, and I don't know what the pathology is around that. I don't know if it's a survivor thing. I don't know if it's like, it's this, this idea of trying to be in charge. But I think when I look at the range of organizations that are trying to serve, every single one of them has a head and a group and a director and half a dozen of them maybe get together and they get larger. I see this on the business side, where folks they want to start their business. Mom makes great cookies. I'm going to be the cookie guy or whatever. And as opposed to saying, hey, there's a bakery over here. I want to go help and be a part of that, growing that bakery. So I think that, to me, that level of self-reflection, I think, is important, because as we look at what it takes to join sometimes means sitting in the back. Sometimes means putting your back into somebody else's idea or somebody else's vision or somebody else's organization. And I think that's something that we try to provide opportunities for people to engage, but it's also something that, I think we all have to think seriously about is the thing that I'm doing better done with someone else? Can I collaborate with somebody else who's doing a similar mission? And it doesn't matter. We have a saying in my office that it's amazing what you get done when you don't care who gets the credit. And I think that that's a lot of what, I think the credit issue, I think, is a challenge.
So, from the sociological perspective, I'm going to take the race, what you talked about the race, and I think that we have a big problem with communication here in Shreveport. I'm not from here originally. My family's originally from Chicago, and I've lived in other big cities, like some of you, and just seeing the way that we interact with each other, it is heartbreaking. Yes, thank you, because it's just, we are all people, and we should be able to talk to each other and say, I found one of the things that I know from living farthest and well, Shreveport has so many different communities, but like you think about, like you meet somebody and like, oh, what high school did you go to? Okay, and maybe that's typical of other parts of the country, but especially here. And as soon as you say that, oh, what high school did you go to? People are gonna like, boom. And I'm like, I went to Captain Shreve. Please don't judge me for that. Hey, Shreve, proud Gator, okay? But I found that once I started intermingling with people from Magnet, for example, and Magnet, I feel like my daughter goes to Magnet now, and it's just I find that they seem to have better mixing at Magnet, because it's not all just one area. But I just feel like we need to have more conversations about race in Shreveport. I've been a part of some of them in the past and recently, and I think that that's something that we really need to tackle in our community.
Thank you all. All right, so I'm gonna shift to, the audience has been great giving questions, so please keep them coming, but this is one from the audience, and again, for any of the four panelists, let's not all four do it, just one or two of you, but the question is, what advice would you give for someone who has tried to join clubs before, but struggled to feel like they belong?
Okay, so I consider myself, I guess, an ambivert, but mostly introverted. And I think you don't have to be intimidated to join a club, and don't assume that you have to be you don't have to be a leader in the group, because groups need members. So go in and don't be afraid to join. Just, go and say, okay, I'm not going to be very active. I'm just going to check it out. Or if you have a friend that invites you along, go with them. But you don't have to go in saying, I'm going to lead the pack. And, you can, even if you don't feel like you like to go into very people-y environments, like I know probably for some of you coming out today, it was like, oh, I'm going to go, no, I'm not, I don't know, right? So go and find where you belong in there. Like, is it preparing for a event? Can you go in and lead hands into setting up or getting things together to put it together, rather than participating in just the event itself? I mean, it takes a lot of hands. So don't be intimidated by joining groups. You don't have to be the leader. And maybe you'll get some passion going along the way and become a leader, but maybe you just be a really good joiner.
Anyone else on that one?
I would just say keep going. So one of the hobbies I have, I'm looking at a friend, Laura Baxter. I'm a runner. My stress of juvenile court, I would get that stress out in running. And so joining those groups, is a group of USA Fit is one of the groups in town anyway. So going to these running groups and meeting people, and I would go to a group and be like, I met no one, connected to no one, that didn't work. I would try another one, try another. And then finally 2020, COVID hits, and Laura, a longtime friend, says, yeah, there's a running group at Rhino, hit this group, and totally different group of people, all over the map politically. We don't agree on a bunch of things. We love running together, and it's like therapy. And so you just keep going until it's like the timing of a relationship. You've got to hit each other at the right time in the right headspace, and it's got to be me and you, and so you just keep going until you meet the right people at the right time.
Love that. All right, I'm gonna hit you guys with another one from the audience. The question is, how do we empower our youth to become more socially engaged?
So one of the things that we tried this year, since 1977, the Chamber has done a leadership program for adults. And I don't know, many of you may have been a part of it at one time or another. It's a well-regarded program. We call it sort of the backstage tour of the community. And this year, for the first time, we started doing it with high school students, because one of the things I recognized with our boys that grew up here is most of them, the only time they saw somebody from another school was on the other side of a sports event. There were no social or other, district-wide this or district-wide that, at least as far as I could tell. So we asked for each high school to identify 4 kids to come and be a part of this experience. And then we get them together for one day a month throughout the school year. So far, it's working pretty well. My proudest moment, I think, was the first day when they all came in with their 2 or 3 friends, and they sat with their 2 or 3 friends. And then at the end of the day, they were all talking to each other. They had made connections with each other. And so for figuring out how we do that, one of the other things that we're trying to do is work is incredibly important to young people. My dad signed me up to be a paper boy when I was 13 years old. And that taught me a lot. I didn't like getting up early, and I hated throwing papers, but it taught me a lot of other stuff too. And so one of the things that we're trying to figure out is, how do we give every kid a work-based learning experience before they graduate high school? The state has changed some rules that make that attractive to the school system, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, we need our young people to feel like work is something they want to do. They're not all going to be TikTok influencers, they're not all going to make the NBA, and they're not all going to be YouTube stars. So you know what? Somebody's got to change your pipes, change your diapers, and change your oil. And so we need to get folks engaged and excited about the world of work. And the only way to do that, we think, or one of the only ways to do that, is to have them experience what that's like. To go in and meet an adult human who's they're not related to, hopefully, and have a positive experience of what it means to have expectations and to contribute to something larger than themselves. And so those are, I think we are the people we've been waiting for. The only way this is going to happen is if we create these opportunities as a community for our young people to have meaningful interactions with adults who are not their parents, that are also expectations of the community that will one day be theirs. They are not going to be able to sit at home and order everything online forever. Somebody's going to have to drive DoorDash, right? So you got to get out there and be a part of it if you want to make the system work. So that's how I think that's how we're trying, at least in some small way, to make those connections.
So remember when it was really fun to make or to ridicule millennials? It was like the cool thing to do with their cronuts and their soy milk and all of that, right? But now we punch down to Gen Z, right? We make fun of them. They're weird. We don't understand when they talk. Gen Z and Gen Alpha, y'all are a different breed, right? But Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they have superpowers. Here's the thing that they have that we don't have as adults. They're extremely self-aware, right? And they communicate in a way that is very sophisticated for their age. Rich talks about this all the time. These kids come to our film classes, they already understand the language of film, right? These are things that people spend years in film school trying to learn how to edit and stuff like that. They've already figured that stuff out by watching TikTok and Instagram for large parts of their lives. I did a lot of research before this, and by research I Googled some stuff like 2 hours ago. but there's a so Gen Z, they spend about 4 hours a day on a device, right? So cell phones or tablets, computers, they spend most of that time infinite scrolling, right? Because the internet and social media, there's no end point. There's no finite run time. If you get on there, you can stay on there for as long as you want until somebody either takes it away from you or you have to go to sleep. So it's this delicate balance that we have with this generation, these two new generations that are coming up, where they're extremely self-aware. They have a ton of empathy, right? They don't have a lot of the prejudices that we have, but they're also exposed to a lot of things that can damage them emotionally and psychologically, right? You see the challenges that these kids have when they're in that developmental phase between like 13 and 16, and they struggle a lot with the social pressures that come with social media. What I think we can do is to show them some grace, show them some respect, talk to them, encourage them. That is the starting point. Stop punching down. We've gotten so good at punching down to everybody that we look down on. If you look different, you sound different, you do different things, you're into different stuff, we're really good at making fun of other people. But I promise you, this generation, the way we struggle with social media. So on average, they spend about 4 hours a day. I get my weekly report for screen time, 6 hours every week, and it's embarrassing, right? And I say a lot of it's for work, a lot of it's because I plug my phone in when I'm driving, so that counts as screen time. But we are struggling with dealing with social media. We are the ones who are really, really failing at reckoning with what social media is and what social media isn't, right? They can see it. They see the entire chessboard. So we need to listen to them a little bit more, but we also need to put an arm around them and encourage them.
So this is one of the areas where I struggle because, and this is not just Shreveport, this is in a lot of different cities. There's 2 Shreveports to some extent for children. If you've got money, it's a great town. We have the #1 high school in the state, the #1 middle school in the state, the top 3 elementary schools in the state. Cabosa, Little League, you want to play, we got theater, we got arts, I mean, come do all of these fantastic, if you've got the entry fee and the money to get somebody to drive you, there's so many opportunities. About 38% of the children that live in Caddo live in poverty. And so they don't have access to that. And if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so they don't know, every child wants to feel significant at something. They want to be great and known by their friends. You're the piano player, you're the football player, you're the, name your, whatever it is. And so for the kids that don't have access to that, they really do struggle. The flip side of that, we did a quick study in juvenile 2021, which was the second worst time for Shreveport's juvenile crime in our history. It was 2021. 1992, 93 was the worst. But in 2021, only 304 children came to juvenile detention. There's 65,000 children in the parish, and only 304 were causing all of our crime. It's a relatively small number that you can get your hand around. Only 66 of them came back twice. And the one thing they had in common is they had 0 what we call pro-social adults. Your mother, I was fortunate enough, I'm looking at my stepmother. I have a mother, a father, a stepmother, aunts, my aunt is right there. I have aunts, uncles, coaches, ministers, all of the village that helped to raise me are my pro-social adults. The 66 kids that came back twice, we laid out all the files on the table and said, find one. Not one in 66 files. Not a mom, not a grandmother, not an aunt, not a coach. These were 66 kids that were raising themselves. And so for the kids in Shreveport that are coming from that part of town, from that kind of rougher childhood, we have to find a way to expose them to positive things so they can find that thing they're significant at and then drive to that.
And there you go, describing kids that lack social capital, like we talked about. And social capital is something that we have to help kids to find. And again, you said pro-social adults. We need to be those people. We need to be good examples. And you think about it, we need to put down our phones, be a good example to our kids. My daughter's 9. We need to put on our phones and get out there and do things. I mean, we're going to tell our kids to get out of the house and go do something. We need to bring them out and do that kind of thing. So, and here I am. I'm being a pro-social adult today. I brought my daughter. Okay. But yes, social capital. Kids need, and when I think about things that, like, when I was a kid, I remember, there's the Big Brothers and Big Sisters programs. Do we have an active Big Brothers and Big Sister program?
Yes.
See, and things like that. But I mean, what mentor programs. We have things at LSUS, like, where we bring dual enrollment. So that's students that are coming in and getting experience doing research and being college students. So, yeah.
We actually have a map of it if you consider college football. So in Louisiana, if you're a young man and you can play football, we will find you. And there will be another father who will drive you to that practice because I want my son to win and you're really good at it. We will find any child in any setting if they're good at football and get them there and they're exposed to this fantastic thing and then they thrive. But if they play piano, it doesn't make the money. If they, whatever that thing that they love and they're good at, we have to figure out a way to build the social capital for all of those things. But that's kind of the roadmap is football.
I'm going to throw one more question, I think, maybe two, depending on length of responses. This one's from the audience, too. So the question is, again, for any of you, what are some of the best ways or strategies for expanding true belonging within our community?
Authenticity. I think authenticity is just a huge thing. Just being able to just tell people, hey, you know what? I'm uncomfortable being here too. Or, it took a lot of effort for me to get here too. Offering somebody a ride, I think that's a big thing. I wish we had better public transportation here in Shreveport. That's a big thing. I've lived in other big cities. It makes a big difference. I mean, if you can't get to a practice, you think about, how many people here are worried about driving at night? I'm getting to the age where, those beams are coming bigger, right? The stigmatism is getting more serious. What if we had something, more ride shares? You look around and we have so many people that are just driving themselves to work all by themselves. I think, public transportation would be a good thing there. I'm gonna get on that one.
Anyone else? No, I can move on.
I was just, I think along with that, it's also just reaching out, talk to somebody. I mean, it starts with us. We're the ones who have to do the reaching out. If you're the potted plant who waits for people to talk to you, or you're not the person who's going and joining or making that decision. So it really is an act of will on the part of each one of us to do that 1% better or that 2% better. And then that, all the people in the room, that's a lot of percent better.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one more. All right, so the question is, what can our community do to help group organizers find free or cheap meeting places and venues?
Well, I think from a logistical standpoint, and this might sound like a cop-out, but just like talk to people, ask questions, because you never know when you will run into someone who has a space that you might think is off limits, but they might welcome you with open arms. There are over 2,000 nonprofits in Northwest Louisiana. That's a ridiculous number. I could probably name 15 if I, maybe 20, 25, but beyond that, so there are people who are out there doing work, and what they need is people to serve, right? Nonprofits generally serve people in some capacity. There are lots of spaces available. I mean, that's one thing that Shreveport has, is we have all kinds of facilities all over the place. Some in varying levels of disrepair, but there's a lot of availability. We have universities here that have facilities that are available to people. And I know this for a fact from working at LSUS. We had places on campus that were available to people for free. And guess what? Nobody shows up to use them, right? But it's because we don't talk to each other. We don't communicate. We don't form those bonds by saying, oh, are you looking for this? Hey, I know someone who you might want to talk to. Or have you tried this, right? I think it's that human connection that we need to get back to. Again, social media is great, but a face-to-face conversation, man, that's like 2 days worth of back and forth online. You can knock out in a 5-minute conversation. You read someone's expression and you're like, oh, okay, yeah,
I mean, and we have as you mentioned, a huge number of, we have libraries, we have SPAR facilities, the chamber. I mean, there are lots of places that you can have meetings or events or activities that are again, it may not be the snazziest place in town, or, you may need to bring your own chairs or something, but there are options out there. So I think it's about being creative with what we have. I think sort of in line with the leadership followership thing I mentioned earlier, I think we have this sense that we need to constantly reinvent the wheel, that no one's done it before. And you know what, lots of people are doing it. Lots of people, that's the reason we have 2,000 nonprofit organizations, because people are constantly doing it. And so I think if you, instead of saying, I need to build this, I need to maybe it's just ask, is anybody else doing this first? Or is there a place I can do? Is there someone who can help me, or someone I can help do the thing that I want to do, as opposed to feel like I have to stand it up all by myself.
Well, can I have a couple things I want to say, and then I'm going to kick it over to Wendell. But first, can we get a round of applause for this excellent group here? And then these are kind of my final words. Well, also, can we get a huge round of applause for Robinson Film Center and INAR for putting this event together. and this is my final kind of actionable item for the room. I know probably, I don't know, 80% of this room, and everyone I know who is in this room is doing really great work. And so my challenge or ask of each of you who is here is, before you leave tonight, doesn't have to be in this room, could be out in the lobby, but I implore you to meet one new person tonight, and just quickly, don't ask them what high school they went to, but just introduce yourself and ask them, who are you? And that's it. Just connect with one person you don't know. And with that, Wendell.
Thank you. Please give a round of applause to Jeffrey Goodman. Can I borrow that mic? I use the crappy mic because I'm embarrassed to let other people use it. So, okay, this is much better. So thank you all for coming tonight. So these 2,000 nonprofits, I don't know what the conversations y'all are having at INAR, but we are all kind of having those conversations about what it's going to look like tomorrow. So my ask to all of you is, in addition to introducing yourselves to each other, pay attention to these organizations that are doing work to make our community better. Because I promise you, the work is getting harder and harder every single day, and we need these organizations to continue to thrive, right? When you go outside, ask about all of the amazing nonprofits that INAR supports, and they will tell you about them, learn about them, figure out that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, because if you take 2,000 organizations, they're probably already doing that really cool idea that you had last night when you were sitting at home watching TV, right? Please, please, please support each other. Let's just, man, it's really hard not to get emotional about this stuff. But we are in a place where this movie is more important than ever. I'm sitting watching this film, I'm like, how can I get every single person I know to watch this film, right? Well, there's a good answer, it's on Netflix. So go home and annoy all of your friends and send them a link to watch this movie, because we really need to get off of our devices and we really need to start interacting with each other again. And that is the only path forward. We'll let Gen Z and Gen Alpha figure out how to reckon with technology and how we will evolve and incorporate technology in a healthy way. We are not doing that well, right? So let's do what we know how to do, which is talk to each other, engage with each other, join or die. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Wendell. I want to say that we are convening nonprofits around the state around these issues. So we are building the capacity of nonprofits, and Wendell was in one of our cohorts, our professional development cohorts. So if you'd like to see more of this work, we do need to raise our money. We are self-generated, rely on donations, and many foundations around us have supported our work. But there is a QR code on the back for you can donate to INAR. I encourage you to donate to Robinson Film Center too. They are a nonprofit organization and they are being impacted by these cuts as well. So thank you for coming today, and yes, you're welcome to talk to anyone of our team. We can direct you to all of those. I probably can't list all 22,000 in our state, but I can get pretty close. So, okay, all right.
Just last word, thank you all for joining tonight.
Thank you.